Hey, alright, nice to see you here. Now you're going to get a new treat if you're watching the YouTube videos. You get to see my pretty face. There is no good side to look at me here, so take which one you like best. It's probably going to be full on frontal, large nose, big bulging forehead. Okay, a lot like a Cro-Magnon. Okay, but anyway, this one is entitled The Expansion of Industry. I hope you enjoy these quick amounts of notes. Don't forget you will have an Edmodo quiz that will go along with this. Okay, let's begin. So, the United States industrializes. So, with the end of the Civil War, American industry expanded and millions of people left their farms to work in mines and factories. By the early 1900s, the United States had become the world's leading industrial nation, which is quite remarkable because in 40 short years. Our gross national product by the time of World War I, which is GNP is the total value of goods and services produced by a country, was 8 times greater than at the end of the Civil War. So that's a remarkable amount of growth. They did this by using water, timber, coal, iron, and copper as natural resources that were found in the United States in great abundance, which helped lead to our success. Transcontinental Railroad increased industrialization by bringing settlers and miners to the west and moving resources to the factories in the east. You had the advent of petroleum being developed, which could be turned into kerosene for lanterns and stoves, so no more would they have to really worry about using whale blubber or something like that. Okay. Demand for kerosene in the United States creates the oil industry. In 1859, Edwin Drake drills his first oil well near Titusville, Pennsylvania. As oil production increased, so did economic expansion. So between 1860 and 1910, the population of the United States also triples. This provided a large workforce and a greater demand for consumer goods. Okay, sorry, I'm looking over, just checking my notes. What takes place a lot in the United States at this time is what we call free enterprise. It was the basis of our business industry. Okay, and the approach they took at the time was called laissez-faire, or as I used to tell the world history kids, laissez-faire. It's a French phrase that means let people do as they choose, and it was a popular idea in the late 1800s. Many Americans believed the government should not interfere with the economy. They still kind of think that a little bit. Instead, they wanted supply and demand to regulate prices and wages. Okay, very good capitalistic thoughts. Entrepreneurs would risk their capital to organize and run a business. And in the late 1800s, entrepreneurs were attracted to manufacturing and transportation fields. So as a result, hundreds of factories and thousands of miles of railroads were built because of this. Another important source of private capital was Europe. Okay, they wanted to put money into us because it looked like a great place to invest, not just into Europe. Foreign investors saw more opportunity for profit in the U.S. than they did at home. Okay, one question that was often asked then, as is now, was what was the government's role to be in industrialization? So in the late 1800s, state and federal government had a laissez-faire attitude by keeping taxes and spending low and by not imposing regulations on industry. Okay, government did not control wages or prices. It adopted policies to help industry. And since the early 1800s, the northeastern states and southern states debated on economic policies. Northerners wanted high tariffs so they could protect their industries from foreign competition. Southerners, they opposed these tariffs because they imported a lot of goods, and this helped keep the cost of imports down. The Civil War did end this economic debate. After the South seceded, the Morrill Tariff was passed, which reversed years of declining tariffs. The high tariffs contradicted laissez-faire policies and harmed many Americans. As the United States raised tariffs on foreign products, other countries responded by raising their tariffs against American products. American companies who sold goods overseas, especially farmers, were hurt by these high tariffs. Many business leaders and members of Congress felt tariffs were necessary to protect American industry against the already established European factories, but by the early 1900s, American industries were larger and highly competitive. Many business leaders began to encourage free trade, believing they could compete internationally and succeed. One aspect that helped fuel this growth and industrialization was new inventions. Okay, it increased our productivity, which in turn produced wealth and made job opportunities for people. 1876, you have the Scottish-American inventor Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, which, as you can see right here, is what we get now. Telephone then looked a lot different. Okay, in 1877, Bell and Associates organized the Bell Telephone Company, which later became the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, known as AT&T. And thus, again, you have my contract plan here that I get stuck with for 2 years. All right, and in the late 1800s, Thomas Edison invented perfected the phonograph, the light bulb, the electric generator, the dictaphone, the mimeograph, and the motion picture, all of which are being used to make this current video that you are seeing right now. In 1882, Edison Electric Illuminating Company became a new industry and began supplying electric power to customers in New York City. The clothing industry increased productivity in the mid-1800s with the introduction of the Northrop automatic loom, the power-driven sewing machine, and cloth cutters. And then mass production in the shoe industry allowed large factories to produce shoes more cheaply and efficiently than local cobblers. By doing this, these savings could then be passed on to the consumer, which drove the cost down of stuff. Instead of, you don't have to pay for labor and somebody making something, so it would drive costs down. Okay, we're making all these goods, but we haven't got any way to move them around. Well, railroads help spur the growth. Okay, they encourage the growth of American industry. They linked the nation and increased the size of markets. The railroad industry stimulated the economy by spending large amounts of money on steel, coal, and timber. And in the early 1800s, most railways served only local needs, resulting in many unconnected rail lines. But you get a hodgepodge of railroads. Okay, so Eastern capitalists wanted to create a single rail transit system from the many smaller railroads, so they wanted to connect them all. Eventually, 7 systems controlled most of this railroad traffic. The most famous railroad consolidator was Cornelius Vanderbilt, and he merged 3 short New York railroads to form the New York Central in 1869. He was the first to offer direct rail service from New York City to Chicago. So, in 1883, rail service became safer and more reliable when the American Railway Association divided the country into 4 time zones or regions where the same time was kept. You can thank the United States Railway System for this, because this is what gives us time zones. Large integrated railroad systems provided increased efficiency, a decrease in time spent in long-distance travel, and it united Americans from different regions. Okay, real quick, just want to talk about the land grant system. Okay, land grants were given to the railroad companies, which we spoke about earlier, by the federal government to encourage this railroad construction. Railroad companies like Union Pacific and Central Pacific were able to cover all their building costs by selling this land to settlers, real estate agencies, and other businesses. Okay, who is behind all this railroad building? Well, the wealth of the railroad entrepreneurs led to accusations that they had acquired their wealth through illegal means. One of the entrepreneurs with the worst reputation was Jay Gould, who used information he obtained as a railroad owner to manipulate stock prices to his benefit. Railroad investors realized they could make more money through land grants than by running a railroad, so many investors bribed members of Congress to vote for more land grants. In 1872, corruption in the railroad system became public with the Credit Mobilier scandal. Can't talk. Several stockholders of the Union Pacific set up the Credit Mobilier, a construction company. The investors signed contracts with themselves. The company greatly overcharged Union Pacific, and the railroad agreed to pay the inflated bills. So when the railroad was completed, the investors had made a fortune, but the railroad was almost bankrupt. So Congress agreed to give additional grants to the railroad after several members of Congress were given shares in Union Pacific at a price well below market value. An investigation implicated several members of Congress, including James Garfield, who later became president of all the people. Not all railroad entrepreneurs were corrupt. James J. Hill built the Great Northern Railroad without any federal land grants or subsidies, and it became the most successful transcontinental railroad and the only one not to go bankrupt. And that thus concludes our talk about the expansion of American industry. I hope you enjoyed this, and be sure to take the Edmodo quiz that will go with it. There will be 5 questions on this one this time, so make sure you get that done. All right, thank you. Bye.